good morning. I thank you for having me here, and I'd be glad to give you some speech about the danger of deception. But first, let me introduce myself. I am Luvea Guatan, a criminologist student. Okay, from the word itself, danger, and then it needs to avoid, right? The other word is deception. So let me give you a little detail about this word. Deception. Do you like to tell lies? Then you're deceitful. That's someone who's untrustworthy, two-faced, or fraudulent. And for you to know, being called deceitful are literally not a compliment. And in simple words, it is the act of deceiving someone. Let me tell you some narrow scenario. For example, this kind of lying are self-aware, for your know. That exactly, you know what were you doing? For example, I, myself, as a child, lied to my parents for having completed my chores, or I, as a student, saying that I wasn't able to complete my assignment on time because I had to care for my sick buddy. So, knowing what anticipated on them, I, as the deceiver, tries to cover up my failure, and in the majority of the time awareness and intention, deceptions of this kind are met with societal scorn, which we convey with comments such, "You oath to be daring enough to accept your punishment." Actually, listeners, there's a lot of aspects that using deception in our daily life. Anyway, let's focus on our main topic, which was the danger of deception. This will stimulate your mind and your heart. The fact of the matter is we all like to think of ourselves as somewhat intelligent. We are often hesitant to admit sometimes that others would have taken advantage of us. Maybe we were sold something that didn't turn out to be what was advertised. Or maybe we get something other what we paid for, or maybe we even saw something that was represented as trustworthy but it was full of defects. When we discovered the truth, we were angry and we felt cheated. We didn't get the bargain that we thought we were getting. We frequently act worse off than if we had never been involved in the situation in the first place. Almost. One of the first sins identified in the church is deception. Did you hear what I said? One of the first sins identified in the church is literally deception. Since then, it has continued to be practiced frequently, but it should never be tolerated. Deception. Another type of lying is deception. However, the deceiver intentionally leads others to believe that a falsehood is actually what is true, which results in a greater degree of wrong. For you to know, listeners, deception may often be fatal and has been the cause of death of numerous people who are unaware victims of it. Many campaigns are driven by deception, candidates manipulate by deception, and battles have been started, won, and lost on deception. Additionally, it becomes significantly more destructive when it enters a church. Deception is either leading someone astray or purposefully misleading them. Sometimes, the scriptures warn us about it more than once, and if it possesses such a threat, we need to be aware, listeners, of the type of deception that might be employed against us so that we might arm ourselves. Let me give you another situation. Listeners, like similar to how our ego reacts to self-celebration, for instance, you were overly focused with looking nice because for many people today, appearance is everything, right? People today want to appear a certain way, but in actuality, they are quite the opposite opposite of that. Listeners, you all already know that many people today give us the wrong impression. They pretend to be one thing, but actually are another. Even today's young children learn how to present themselves well, which explains why your teenage boys and girls desire to wear a Price's name brand clothing. Many people are learning how to present themselves well. But actually, they are not taught that a person can appear to be one thing while actually being another. For example, a person can appear to be a football player while actually not being one, or a lawyer while actually only being a non-attorney spokesperson. Because appearances can be deceiving. Allow me to share some tale of a man who asked a stunning young woman out on a date after meeting her at the mall. You know what? I'll say. He said it sounded like a good idea. Then the woman says to come over to my apartment and that she'll make a delicious dinner while watching TV and munch on some popcorn. Then the boy arrived at her house at the scheduled hour. But she gave him a big embrace and kiss as soon as he arrived. And then all was literally going well as they enjoyed a beautiful dinner together. As they were seated on the sofa, the boy spotted a picture of a man standing by the couch of the table. He said, "Is that your brother?" She said, "No." He said, "Don't tell me that's your husband." She said, "No." He said, "Don't tell me that he's your husband." Again, she said, "No." She said, "Actually, that is a picture of me before I had my sex change operation." And then he threw up and went home. And these days, that what looks like a man might be a woman. What looks like a man or woman might be another. Although appearances can be deceiving, the truth is that even a pig in a tuxedo is still a pig. And I'm sad to say that many people these days place a lot of importance in looking nice. While many people would want to think that they never lie or act dishonestly in front of friends and coworkers, I can assure you that at some point in our life, we have all both told and received lies. Would it be wonderful if they were techniques to determine if someone is trying to deceive us? Since we are frequently the victims of lies. Let's be real here, listeners. Nobody enjoys being lied to. Nobody enjoys being lied to. Every human being has the natural want to be told the truth and to know the truth. Even when society and culture sets trap for us with the deceptive promise of happiness, the very people who set the traps are the very first to point the fingers and discredit their victims' character, applying labels to ruin their reputations. The moment that people fall for the trap and compromise themselves. It is quite harmful to lie, listeners, when it is revealed the relationship of trust we have with one another are severed. Future relationships based on trust become more difficult as a result. It creates a situation in which people's economic potential may suffer. The unwritten rules of social interactions are threatened by deception. Additionally, the mere act of lying arises from selfish desire to manipulate other people's situation in order to improve one's own position in those circumstances.
We may add additional individuals to the list of the most prone to yield to deception. Yeah, and then those who are busy, anxious, youthful, casual, and lazy.
Ultimately,
There is a way to detect deception, and it involves acting two different ways, one of which may seem a little odd, and the other more as normal. Listeners, knowing the traits of deceptive behaviors will enable you to spot them when someone engaged in them, which will help you protect yourself from deception. In other words, listeners, the complexity and variety of nonverbal cues in deceptive behavior, for you to know, listeners, it is less than that of truthful behavior. For you to realize, listeners, that nonverbal behaviors were used when engaging in deceptive behavior. The dishonest circumstance in which they were instructed to steal a wallet, then hide it, and tell the truth when confronted. Or the honest circumstance in which they were unknowing observed to the theft. The structured conduct of truthful people is more varied and complex than of liars. Listeners, contrary to popular belief, deceivers are able to regulate their display so that outward behaviors convey the opposite of the internal states, conveying composure rather than distress and expressivity rather than tension. This refutes the notion that someone who stumbles over their words, fidgets, or exhibits other deceptive behavior is doing so. It might even be the exact opposite. Furthermore, compared to individuals who were telling the truth, the liar had more anticipatory activity. The theft group was more likely to concentrate on anticipating their responses than the innocent group due to the guilt they felt and the knowledge that they would be busted about the incident. Let me ask you, listeners, how frequently do you believe that your friends, family, and coworkers are lying to you every day? The likelihood is that the actual figure is significantly higher than you would anticipate. Humans are inherently adept investigators when it comes to figuring out if they have been misled, even though we may not be aware of it. According to some researchers that have known that when people believe they are being lied to, they instinctively know what to focus on. Literally, listeners, we people were more likely to mention non-behavioral evidence than behavioral evidence as ways to recognize a liar when questioned about how they found out someone was lying. Additionally, more people who were asked about detecting a lie than those who were asked about discovering a falsehood mentioned using liars' conduct as indicators. To put it another way, if you simply suspect someone of lying to you, you will concentrate on things like hand gestures or fidgeting. Whereas, if you have proof that they have lied to you, you will utilize evidence like a verbal confession to prove it right. But actually, listeners, listening to the Spirit of God will help you avoid becoming the target of deception. Decide for doing good. Read the real story. Recognize God's will. Pray for wisdom so that you can distinguish between truth and error, and or not, carried away by every breeze of belief. Test everything, cling to the right things, put what you already know to good use. Truth practice prevents our heart from being tricked. And now, I encourage you. This is your speaker, Lovea Quatan, and have a good day. Bye-bye.